It's a little-known historic fact, but the Rio Grande Valley has ties to Fidel Castro's Cuba. Cameron County Historical Commissioner Jean Fernandez explains in this week's Throwback Thursday.
Brenda, I'm here in front of the old 1912 Cameron County Jail. Through these doors passed so many people that were influential, that made the history of what we have today in the valley. And what may amaze you, what happened inside here, tied together with the Cuban Revolution of 1959.
Comandante Fernandez, you have a visitor.
Now, this is a likely scenario of what happened in South Texas, in Brownsville, that is going to absolutely amaze you. There are many points of our history, of our local history, that have gone off of the radar, that have evaporated, so to speak, but they're very, very interesting. This particular segment deals with the Cuban Revolution. In 1947, the Cold War began, as Russia was the dominant force over in the Warsaw Pact area, and we were concerned here in the United States with all the trials that dealt with the McCarthy era. And we were up to here with communism, socialism, and all of that route. But let's go back. Let's go back to 1955. Fidel Castro and his brother and Che Guevara sought refuge in the interior of Mexico. They set up a revolutionary training camp in Veracruz. In 1956, they departed the shore of Mexico for Cuba, and they started the Cuban Revolution. In March of 1958, there was an interception at the Brownsville-Matamoros Bridge, and there was $200,000 worth of gold and pearls that were confiscated by U.S. authorities from 3 Cuban expatriates. It is said that that particular cache of valuables was destined to buy guns for the Cuban Revolution. By January 1 of 1959, that was when the Cuban Revolution was sprung. And there was a flotilla of boats that were leaving the island for 2 reasons. One is the Bautista regime, which was very, very cruel and the cause of the revolution. They were getting out of Cuba. And secondly, there was a tinge of communism that was in the minds of people. It had not been fully sprung at that point in time because Castro was working on the democracy and the elimination of a tyrant, and that was the main focus. But there was another group that was in that flotilla that were leaving suspected dominance by the communists. On that date of January 1, there was a person that was apprehended in Key West, and then he was taken on to Miami. And that was a senator under the Bautista regime. He was one of the most cruel henchmen that Bautista had, and he landed in Miami. They saw the importance of him, and guess where they took him? They took him to Brownsville, Texas, directly after that. He had $17 million in his possession that has not been found, by the way. And he was guilty or accused of about 2,000 deaths and murders back in Cuba. And that was the fellow that showed up in these walls. In March of 1958, there was another incident that took place off of the coast of Boca Chica Beach. And what it was an arms shipment. The United States Coast Guard rammed a 70-foot Nicaraguan vessel off of the coast of Boca Chica Beach. Inside of that vessel, there were 40 revolutionaries dressed in full camo. There were cases of Thompson submachine guns. There were thousands of rounds of ammunition. Even though the United States may have had a sentiment that wanted to back or support the Cuban Revolution, they couldn't, because it was a violation of the Neutrality Act of 1918. And these particular seamen that were apprehended were guilty of that violation. They had to be contained. We're dealing with 1959 in that period, and it was what we would call the honeymoon period of Castro's whole movement. We did not quite know how to take him. The Houston JCs invited him to speak in Houston, and he did so. But more incredibly, the Brownsville Chamber of Commerce sent out a memo to Havana inviting him to come to Brownsville. Now, that never took place because by the time he got through with Houston, the crumblings of his particular facade were in the works. Incidents of this nature are not unusual for South Texas. Amazingly enough, throughout its history, it had a lot of color in its makeup, and the rest is history. For KVEO News, I'm Eugene Fernandez.